The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone could have imagined. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the command center, watching displays that showed uprising after uprising across Zephyrian space. 47 worlds that had been enslaved for decades were suddenly remembering what freedom meant. General Matt Thompson was coordinating with resistance cells that had spontaneously formed on dozens of worlds. The communications were chaotic, coming through jury-rigged transmitters and improvised networks, but the message was clear. The galaxy was rising up. "Admiral," he reported, "we're in contact with 17 different species across 12 star systems. They're all reporting the same thing. Their people are refusing to work, fighting their guards, and demanding freedom." On the Thaylan homeworld, Elder Sithka was leading his people in their first act of rebellion in 37 years. The mineral extraction facility that had operated without interruption since the conquest was now silent. Thaylan workers had put down their tools and were gathering in the central plaza, their voices raised in ancient songs of freedom. "My people," Sithka called out to the crowd, his voice carrying the human emotions that had awakened their own. "We have lived as slaves so long that we forgot we could choose to be free. These humans have reminded us that some things are worth dying for." The Zephyrian guards at the facility were paralyzed by confusion. Their collective consciousness was so disrupted that they couldn't coordinate a response. Some guards were even experiencing the human emotions themselves, beginning to question whether enslaving other species was morally right. Dr. Helen Brooks was analyzing the communication patterns when she made a startling discovery. "Turner, the emotional broadcast isn't just affecting current Zephyrian space. We're picking up signals from the deep archives of their collective consciousness. It's like human emotions are unlocking memories they've suppressed for centuries." "What kind of memories?" Dr. Turner asked. "Memories of the species they conquered. Every thought, every feeling, every moment of resistance from 47 different worlds. The Zephyrians absorbed it all into their collective mind, but they buried it deep to maintain their logical framework. And now, human emotions are bringing it all to the surface." Exactly. The Zephyrians aren't just experiencing human feelings, they're experiencing the suppressed emotions of every species they've ever conquered. On the aquatic world of the Merhai, warsinger Tolanash was leading a revolution that spread through the ocean cities like a tidal wave. The beautiful coral structures that had been converted into processing centers were being reclaimed by their original inhabitants. "Sing the deep songs," Tolanash called out, her voice carrying through the water. "Let the ocean remember freedom." The Merhai had always been connected through their songs, but the Zephyrians had suppressed their ancient melodies and replaced them with work rhythms. Now, as human emotions flooded through the collective consciousness, the old songs were returning with power that shook the very foundations of the alien installations. Captain Jake Morrison was witnessing something unprecedented in the space around Earth. Zephyrian ships were not just withdrawing, many were actively helping the human defense forces. Ship-mined Vralth had been joined by 17 other vessels whose crews had experienced individual conscience for the first time. "Captain Morrison," Vralth transmitted, "my crew wishes to assist in the evacuation of your wounded. We have medical facilities that could help your injured personnel." Morrison looked at his tactical officer in amazement. Enemy ships were volunteering to provide medical aid. It was so far outside normal military procedure that he wasn't sure how to respond. "Vralth, how do I know this isn't a trap?" "Because I have experienced something your species calls empathy. I feel the pain of your wounded as if it were my own. This feeling compels me to help, even though logic suggests I should still consider you an enemy." Colonel Sam Phillips, who had survived the outer system battles, was now coordinating ground-based resistance networks. Reports were coming in from around the world of Zephyrian occupation forces laying down their weapons and requesting asylum. "Ma'am," he reported to Admiral Carter, "we have over 300 Zephyrian soldiers in custody, but they're not prisoners. They're refugees. They've experienced individual thought for the first time, and they're terrified of being forced back into the collective consciousness." The crystalline Shard-Hi on Wolf 359C were creating something beautiful and terrible. Crystal singer Daleth had organized her people into harmonic formations that were literally singing their crystal cities back to their original configurations. The geometric patterns imposed by the Zephyrians were dissolving as the Shard-Hi reclaimed their architectural heritage. "Sing the frequency of freedom," Daleth called out, her crystal voice creating resonance patterns that spread across the planet. "Let our cities remember their true forms." The harmonic rebellion was so powerful that it was actually damaging Zephyrian equipment. The alien technology, designed for logical efficiency, couldn't handle the chaotic beauty of Shard-Hi crystal songs. Fleet Mind Vash was experiencing something that his species had no words for: moral crisis. As individual conscience awakened in his mind, he began to understand the magnitude of what his people had done. 47 worlds enslaved. Billions of beings forced to live without freedom, entire cultures suppressed or destroyed. Analysis mind Keth. He tried to communicate through the fractured collective consciousness. "What have we become?" Keth's response came back fragmented, filled with the same moral confusion that was spreading through the Zephyrian fleet. I'm experiencing guilt for actions I never questioned before. The humans have infected us with conscience. Is conscience an infection? Or is it the natural state of intelligent beings? It was a question that would have been impossible for a Zephyrian to ask just days earlier. The collective consciousness had always provided answers, not questions. But human emotions had taught them to doubt, to wonder, to choose. Dr. Emma Foster was monitoring the galactic situation when she noticed something remarkable happening in the communication patterns. "Turner, look at this. The rebellions aren't random anymore. The different species are starting to coordinate with each other. How is that possible? Most of these worlds have never had contact before the Zephyrian conquest. The collective consciousness. Even as it's breaking down, it's still connecting minds across the galaxy. The enslaved species are using the Zephyrian mental network to communicate with each other. On Proxima Centauri B, Queen Mind Zaxth was indeed communicating with leaders on other worlds. The insectoid Cricks were sharing tactical information, with the aquatic Merhai, who were coordinating with the crystalline Shard-Hi, who were working with the humanoid Thalans. "My fellow freedom seekers," Zaxth broadcast through the chaotic collective consciousness, "we are stronger together than we ever were apart. Let us coordinate our efforts to reclaim our worlds." The greatest irony of the situation was becoming clear. The Zephyrians had created a galactic communication network to maintain control over their empire. Now that same network was being used to coordinate the largest rebellion in galactic history. Admiral Carter received a communication request from an unexpected source, the Zephyrian High Command on their capital world. The beings who had ordered the conquest of Earth wanted to negotiate. "This is Admiral Lisa Carter of Earth Defense Command," she responded to the transmission. The alien who appeared on screen was different from the Zephyrians they had seen before. This one showed signs of individual personality, emotional stress, and something that looked remarkably like uncertainty. "Admiral Carter, I am High Mind Thalvin of the Zephyrian Council. We wish to discuss." Cessation of hostilities. What terms are you offering? That is the problem, Admiral. We have never negotiated before. Our collective consciousness always provided optimal solutions, but individual conscience has introduced variables we cannot calculate. We do not know how to proceed. General Thompson was coordinating the response to liberation requests from across the galaxy when he realized the full scope of what was happening. Admiral, we're not just witnessing the end of the Zephyrian Empire. We're seeing the birth of something entirely new. What do you mean? A galactic community based on cooperation rather than conquest. The species that are being liberated aren't just fighting for their individual freedom. They're talking about working together to build something better. Dr. Turner was analyzing the emotional patterns still flowing through the Zephyrian network when he made his final discovery. Emma, the human emotions we broadcast aren't just disrupting their collective consciousness. They're teaching them how to feel as individuals while still maintaining connection with others. A collective consciousness based on choice rather than compulsion? Exactly. We may have accidentally created the model for a truly democratic galactic civilization. As the rebellion spread across the galaxy, one thing became clear. The universe would never be the same. Humanity's refusal to surrender had not just saved their own species, it had liberated an entire galaxy and shown that freedom was indeed a universal right. The war was ending, but something far greater was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the day that would be remembered as the Great Awakening. Captain Amy Davis stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Freedom Station, watching ships from 49 different species working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly free interstellar community. The Zephyrian Empire had not been destroyed through military conquest. Instead, it had transformed itself from within as individual conscience spread through their collective consciousness like a benevolent virus. Former Fleet Mind Vash, now calling himself simply Vash, approached Amy with a report in his hands. "Captain Davis," he said, his voice carrying emotions that no Zephyrian had possessed just months earlier. "The final Liberation Fleet has returned from the Outer Rim. The Kepler 438b system is now free, and its people have requested to join the Galactic Federation." Amy smiled as she took the report. The transformation of the Zephyrians still amazed her. They had not just abandoned their empire. They had become some of the most dedicated advocates for freedom in the galaxy, driven by guilt over their past actions and genuine desire to make amends. "How are they adapting to independence?" she asked. "Better than expected. The Veltar have a natural gift for engineering. They've already designed 3 new types of peaceful starships and offered to share the technology freely with all Federation members." President Katie Walsh was addressing the first Galactic Council from Earth's capital, her words being broadcast to every liberated world. The council chamber had been designed by Shardhai crystal singers, built by Thalan engineers, decorated by Merhai artists, and equipped with technology from dozens of species working in cooperation. "Representatives of the free worlds," she began. "6 months ago, humanity faced extinction. Today, we stand not as conquerors, but as equals among friends. The choice we made to fight for freedom rather than accept slavery has freed not just our own species, but 48 others across the galaxy." Elder Sithka of the Thalans rose to respond. His world had become one of the most prosperous in the galaxy since liberation, as his people's natural mining abilities were finally being used for their own benefit rather than to serve alien masters. "Madam President," he said, "the Thalan. People owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid. You showed us that freedom is not just a privilege for the strong, but a right that belongs to all intelligent beings. Dr. Alex Turner was working in his new laboratory aboard the Federation Research Station, collaborating with scientists from across the galaxy. The emotional broadcast technology that had triggered the Great Awakening was being studied and refined, not as a weapon, but as a tool for promoting understanding between species. Dr. Turner, said his new colleague, Dr. Murnash of the aquatic Merhai, our latest tests show that emotional resonance between species can create permanent empathic bonds. This could revolutionize interspecies relations. That's exactly what we hoped for, Turner replied. The goal was never to control other minds, but to help them understand what it means to be free. Dr. Emma Foster had made perhaps the most important discovery of all. Working with former analysis mind Keth, who now served as a researcher rather than a military analyst, she had learned that consciousness itself was far more complex than anyone had imagined. The collective consciousness wasn't inherently evil, she explained to the Galactic Science Council. It was simply incomplete. The Zephyrians had unity without diversity, connection without choice. What we've helped create is something new. Voluntary collective consciousness, where individuals can share thoughts and feelings while maintaining their personal freedom. The former Zephyrian capital world had been transformed into the headquarters of the Galactic Mediation Service. High Mind Thalvin, who now went by the name Thal, worked tirelessly to help resolve conflicts between newly liberated species. The guilt he felt over his people's past actions had become a powerful motivation for peace. Mediator Thal reported. His assistant, a young human named Lieutenant Claire Webb, who had volunteered for interspecies service. We've successfully resolved the territorial dispute between the Krix and the Veltar. Both species have agreed to share the mining rights to the asteroid belt in question. Excellent work, Lieutenant. It seems that former enemies can indeed become partners when they both value freedom above conquest. Captain Jake Morrison was, commanding the new Federation Exploration Service, leading mixed-species crews on missions to contact civilizations that had never encountered the Zephyrian Empire. Their goal was not conquest or conversion, but simple contact and the sharing of knowledge. Captain, reported his first officer, Commander Vralth, the former Zephyrian ship mind who had first chosen conscience over duty. We're approaching the Barnard's star system. Long-range scans show signs of intelligent life on the second planet. Remember the protocol, Commander. We offer friendship and knowledge, but we respect their choice to refuse contact if they prefer isolation. Understood, Captain. It is still difficult for me to imagine approaching other beings without the intention to conquer them, but I am learning that cooperation creates far more value than domination ever did. On Earth, memorial services were being held for the humans who had died in the brief but decisive war. Major Ben Rodriguez, who had survived the destruction of Jupiter Station, spoke at the ceremony honoring Commander Greg Adams, who had sacrificed his mind to operate the emotional broadcast device. Greg Adams died so that not just humanity, but the entire galaxy could live free, Rodriguez said to the gathered crowd. He showed us that sometimes the greatest weapon is not the ability to destroy, but the willingness to share what makes us human. The memorial was attended by representatives from every liberated world. Crystalline Shardhai sang harmonic tributes, aquatic Merhai composed water poems of remembrance, and even former Zephyrians offered their own prayers for the humans who had taught them the value of individual sacrifice. Engineer Sophie Miller had survived her sabotage mission and was now leading the Federation Engineering Corps in designing new types of technology based on cooperation rather than domination. Her latest project was a communication system that could connect different species while preserving their individual cultural identities. The old Zephyrian network forced everyone to think the same way, she explained to her multi-species team. Our new system will let everyone think their own thoughts while still being able to share them with others when they choose to. Dr. Helen Brooks was working on what many considered the most important project in the galaxy, the Freedom Archives. She was collecting the stories, songs, art, and cultural memories of every liberated species, preserving them for future generations. Every species we've contacted has the same thing, she reported to the Galactic Cultural Council. Stories of heroes who chose freedom over safety, tales of resistance against impossible odds, myths about the importance of individual choice. It seems that the desire for freedom is truly universal. The Galactic Federation was growing every month as more species were contacted and invited to join, but membership was always voluntary, and several civilizations had chosen to remain independent while maintaining friendly relations. The Federation respected these choices, understanding that true freedom included the right to choose isolation. President Walsh stood before the assembled representatives for the signing of the Galactic Freedom Charter, a document that guaranteed the rights of all intelligent beings regardless of species, technology level, or cultural development. Today we establish not an empire, but a community, she said, as representatives from 49 worlds prepared to sign. A community based on the principle that freedom is not something to be granted by the powerful, but something that belongs to all thinking beings by right of their existence. Former Fleet Mind Vash was the first to sign, his signature shaking slightly as he wrote. "For my people," he said, "this represents not just membership in the Federation, but forgiveness for the crimes we committed. We pledge to spend the rest of our existence proving that even conquerors can learn to become protectors of freedom." As the ceremony concluded, Captain Amy Davis activated the new Galactic Communication Network. Her message would reach every world in Federation space and would be remembered as Earth's final transmission to the galaxy. "People of the free worlds," she began, "6 months ago, the Zephyrian Empire gave humanity a choice: surrender our freedom or face extinction. Today, I want to send a different message to any who might threaten the freedom of others." She paused, looking out at the representatives of dozens of species who had learned that cooperation was stronger than conquest, that diversity was more valuable than uniformity, that choice was more powerful than compulsion. We are no longer separate species, struggling alone against the darkness of oppression. We are a galactic community united by our shared commitment to freedom. To any who would enslave others, to any who would force their will upon the innocent, to any who believe that might makes right, we say this. Amy. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign Dawn, gazing out at the stars through the massive viewing window. His purple skin gleamed under the soft blue lights of the command center. Around him, his crew worked quietly. At their stations, their movements precise and practiced. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 300 years, and Kethvar had personally overseen the conquest of 12 different worlds. Today would be lucky number 13. "Admiral," called out his second-in-command, Commander Velthos, approaching from the tactical station. "We are approaching the target system. The planet they call Earth should be visible within the hour." Kethvar nodded slowly. He had read the Poda reports about this new world. The inhabitants called themselves humans, and they had only recently developed basic space travel. Their technology was primitive compared to Zephyrian standards. They still used chemical rockets and crude metal ships. Most amusing of all, they fought wars among themselves constantly, showing they had not yet learned the benefits of unity under a superior civilization. "What is our fleet strength?" Kethvar asked, though he already knew the answer. 57 vessels, Admiral. 30 cruisers, 20 destroyers, and 7 dreadnoughts, including our flagship. More than enough to handle any resistance these humans might offer. Kethvar allowed himself a small smile. In his experience, most primitive species surrendered immediately when they saw the power of the Zephyrian fleet. The few that tried to fight usually lasted less than an hour before their crude weapons proved useless against superior energy shields. And plasma cannons. The humans would be no different. "Sir," called the communications officer from across the bridge, "we are receiving strange signals from the inner system. It appears to be some form of electromagnetic transmission." "Primitive radio waves, no doubt," Kethvar said dismissively. "These humans probably think such crude technology can reach across space effectively. Ignore it. We will announce our presence when we are ready." The fleet moved deeper into the human system, passing several small rocky planets and a gas giant with many moons. Kethvar noted the crude orbital stations around some of these worlds, barely more than metal boxes connected by tubes. The humans had clearly never learned proper construction techniques. Their space habitats looked like they might fall apart at any moment. "Admiral," Velthos reported, "long-range sensors are detecting several human vessels near their home world. They appear to be metal constructs of some kind. Very primitive design." "How many ships?" "Difficult to say, sir. Their hulls are made of such dense material that our sensors have trouble penetrating them. Estimates suggest perhaps 20 to 30 vessels of various sizes." Kethvar laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. 20 to 30 ships, and made of metal? These humans truly are backward. Our energy weapons will cut through metal like it was paper. The bridge crew shared his amusement. Over the centuries, they had encountered many species that still used primitive solid matter for their ships. Energy-based construction was far superior, lighter, more flexible, and capable of self-repair. Any civilization that still built ships from dead metal was clearly not ready to join the galactic community as equals. "Bring us to the edge of their home system," Kethvar ordered. "Activate the intimidation formation. I want these humans to see exactly what they are facing." The Zephyrian fleet spread out in a perfect display pattern, each ship's energy hull glowing with menacing light. Their vessels were beautiful and terrifying, sleek curves of pure energy that could shift shape at will, weapons that appeared and disappeared as needed, shields that shimmered like soap bubbles but could stop any attack. It was a sight that had made dozens of species surrender without firing a single shot. "Open a communication channel to the human homeworld," Kethvar commanded. "Let us see how quickly they accept the inevitable." The main screen flickered to life, showing a view of the blue and green planet below. It was actually quite beautiful, Kethvar noted. The humans had chosen a pleasant world to call home. It would make a nice addition to the Empire. "Attention, inhabitants of the planet Earth," Kethvar began, his voice carried by powerful transmitters that would reach every human communication device in the system. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our civilization. You have 1 hour to surrender all military forces and accept our rule. Resistance is futile, and will only result in unnecessary destruction. He gestured for the communications officer to close the channel. Now came the waiting period. Sometimes primitive species tried to negotiate, asking for more time or attempting to bargain. Others surrendered immediately. A few, the most foolish ones, actually tried to fight. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "we are detecting movement from the human vessels. Several of them appear to be approaching our position." "How many?" "Just one, Admiral. A single ship, moving slowly toward our fleet." Kethvar frowned. One ship? That was unusual. Most species either sent negotiators in small, obviously unarmed vessels, or they sent everything they had in a desperate, final assault. Sending a single military vessel suggested either incredible confidence or complete stupidity. "What type of ship is it?" "Unknown design, sir. Length approximately 800 meters. The hull appears to be some kind of metal, alloy, very thick. We are detecting multiple weapon ports along its surface, but they are all closed." 800 meters? Kethvar repeated. That was larger than most Zephyrian destroyers, though still smaller than a cruiser. For a primitive species, it was quite impressive. Perhaps these humans had some surprises after all. "Should we target the approaching vessel, Admiral?" Velthos asked. "Not yet. Let us see what these humans have to say for themselves. Perhaps their spokesperson is aboard that ship." The human vessel continued its approach, moving at a steady but non-threatening speed. Kethvar had to admit, whoever was commanding that ship had courage. It took bravery to fly alone toward an enemy fleet 50 times larger than your own force. "Admiral," the communications officer announced, "we are receiving a transmission from the human ship." "Put it through." The main screen changed to show the interior of what was obviously the human vessel's command center. Kethvar was surprised by what he saw. The humans looked remarkably similar to Zephyrians, though their skin was a pale pink color instead of purple, and they had hair growing from their heads. The bridge itself was crude but functional, full of mechanical controls and primitive displays. Human male stood in the center of the bridge wearing some kind of military uniform. His face was calm and serious, showing no sign of fear despite facing impossible odds. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Liberty," the human said in a clear, steady voice. "I'm here to discuss your demands, Admiral Kethvar." Kethvar smiled. So the humans wanted to negotiate after all. This would be easier than he had expected. Captain Jake Morrison studied the alien face on his main screen. The creature calling itself Admiral Kethvar looked almost human, except for the purple skin and the way its eyes seemed to glow with their own light. Behind the alien, Morrison could see other crew members moving around what was clearly a spaceship bridge, though it looked nothing like any human vessel he had ever seen. "Captain Morrison," the alien admiral said, and Morrison was surprised that the translation software worked so well. "I am pleased to see that your species chooses wisdom over foolishness. Are you prepared to discuss the terms of your surrender?" Morrison kept his face calm, though he felt his crew tense behind him. Lieutenant Amy Brooks at the weapons station caught his eye and raised an eyebrow. Morrison gave her a slight shake of his head. "Not yet." "Admiral Kethvar," Morrison replied, "I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. However, I think there might be some misunderstanding. Earth is not interested in surrendering to anyone." The alien's expression changed, surprise replacing the confident smile. "Captain, perhaps you do not understand the situation. You are facing the full might of the Zephyrian Empire, your single ship against 57 of ours. Surely you can see that resistance is impossible." "I can see that you have more ships. than we do right now, Morrison admitted. But that doesn't mean we're going to give up our freedom without a fight. Earth has never bowed to conquerors, and we're not about to start now. Behind Morrison, his communications officer, Lisa White, was recording everything and transmitting it back to Earth Command. This first contact was not going the way anyone had hoped, but it was important that Earth's leaders see exactly what they were dealing with. Admiral Kethvar's face showed what Morrison guessed was confusion. "Captain, I do not think you understand. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your ships are made of crude metal, while ours are constructed from pure energy. Your weapons are chemical-based projectiles, while we wield the power of plasma and particle beams. This is not a battle you can win." "Maybe not," Morrison said with a slight shrug. "But it's one we're going to fight anyway. That's just who we are." The alien admiral stared at him for a long moment. "You would sacrifice your entire species for the sake of pride?" "We would sacrifice ourselves for the sake of freedom," Morrison corrected. "There's a difference." Morrison could see other aliens, gathering behind their admiral, all of them looking confused and concerned. Apparently, humans were not reacting the way most species did when faced with overwhelming odds. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Kethvar said, his voice taking on a harder tone, "I will give you one more chance to see reason. Order your ship to stand down and signal your home world to surrender. If you do this now, your people will be treated well under Zephyrian rule. We are not cruel masters. We simply believe that primitive species benefit from guidance by their superiors." Morrison felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept it off his face. "Admiral, with all due respect, we don't consider ourselves primitive, and we definitely don't. Consider you our superiors. We're going to have to decline your generous offer." The alien's glowing eyes seemed to get brighter. "Then you choose death over wisdom. Very well. I had hoped your species would be more intelligent, but it seems you are as foolish as you are stubborn." The communication link cut off, leaving Morrison staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. They all knew what was coming next. "Red alert," Morrison announced calmly. "All hands to battle stations. Amy, bring weapons online. Dan, I need everything the engines can give us. Lisa, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the aliens aren't interested in peaceful coexistence." Chief Engineer Dan Parker's voice came over the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, all systems are green. Fusion reactors at full power. Kinetic barriers charged. Armor plating locked down. We're ready for whatever they can throw at us." Lieutenant Brooks looked up from her weapons console. "Railguns are charged and ready, sir. Point defense systems are active. Missile tubes are loaded with our heaviest warheads." Morrison nodded. The USS Liberty was not the largest ship in Earth's fleet, but it was one of the most advanced. Built specifically for deep space exploration and first contact situations, it carried the best weapons and defenses that human technology could provide. Morrison just hoped it would be enough. "Contact the alien fleet," he ordered. Lisa White worked at her station for a moment. "Channel open, sir." "Admiral Kethvar," Morrison said, speaking to the alien fleet. "This is your final warning. Leave our system now, or we will defend ourselves." The response came not in words, but in action. Morrison watched on his tactical display as the alien ships began to move into attack formation. Their energy-based hulls glowed brighter as weapons ports opened along their sides. "Incoming transmission from the flagship," Lisa reported. "Admiral." Kethvar's face appeared on screen again, but his expression had changed completely. Gone was the diplomatic smile, replaced by cold anger. Captain Morrison, you have chosen your fate. Let this be a lesson to your species about the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire. The alien admiral gestured to someone off-screen. Fire, a warning shot across their bow. Let them see what our weapons can do. Morrison gripped the arms of his command chair as one of the alien ships, a sleek destroyer, turned its weapons toward the Liberty. A brilliant beam of energy erupted from the alien vessel passing just in front of the human ship. The beam was so bright that the main screen automatically dimmed to protect the crew's eyes. Impressive light show, Morrison commented. Amy, analysis? Lieutenant Brooks studied her instruments. Particle beam, sir. Very high energy output. If that had hit us directly, it would have done significant damage to an unprotected hull. But we're not unprotected, are we? No, sir. Our kinetic barriers should handle energy weapons just fine. And our armor is designed to absorb and disperse that kind of heat. Morrison smiled grimly. Earth's military had spent decades studying every scrap of information they could find about alien technology from crashed ships and ancient artifacts. They had built their defenses specifically to counter energy-based weapons. Admiral, Morrison said, opening the channel again, that was a very pretty light show. Would you like to see what our weapons can do? The alien's face showed confusion. Again. Captain, are you insane? That was a demonstration of power that should have sent you fleeing in terror. Well, Morrison said, different species, different reactions, I guess. Now, this is your last chance, Admiral. Leave our system, peacefully, or we'll have to remove you by force. Admiral Kethvar's expression shifted to what Morrison could only describe as disbelief. Remove us? Captain, you have one ship. We have 57. Your threats are meaningless. Are they? Morrison asked. Lisa, patch me through to the entire alien fleet. When the channel was open to all the enemy ships, Morrison stood up from his command chair. Attention, ships of the Zephyrian Empire. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Liberty. You have entered our star system without permission and threatened our homeworld. You have exactly 60 seconds to begin withdrawing from this system, or we will consider you hostile invaders and respond accordingly. The alien admiral's laughter came through the speakers, a sound like breaking glass. 60 seconds? Captain, you truly are insane. Very well. Since you insist on this foolishness, we will show you the true power of the Zephyrian Empire. Morrison sat back down and looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all watching him with expressions of trust and determination. They believed in him, and more importantly, they believed in what they were fighting for. All right, people, Morrison said quietly. Let's show these aliens what humans are made of. Admiral Kethvar watched the countdown timer on his tactical display reach 0. The human captain had been given his 60 seconds, and still the primitive metal ship hung motionless in space, showing no signs of retreat. Around him, his bridge. Crew waited for orders, their faces showing a mixture of anticipation and confusion at the humans' stubborn refusal to see reason. Target the human vessel, Kethvar commanded. Full power to weapons. I want this over quickly. Commander Velthos nodded and began issuing orders to the fleet. Across 57 ships, weapon systems that had conquered dozens of worlds powered up to full capacity. Particle beam cannons aligned their targeting systems, plasma torpedo tubes loaded their most destructive warheads, and energy pulse weapons began building up massive charges. On the main screen, Kethvar could see the human ship clearly. It was an ugly thing, he thought, all hard angles and brutal functionality. There was no elegance to it, no beauty in its design. It looked exactly like what it was. A crude weapon built by a primitive species that still thought metal and fire were the height of technology. "All ships report ready to fire, Admiral," Velthos announced. "Fire at will," Kethvar ordered. "Concentrate all fire on the human vessel. I want nothing left but scrap metal." The vacuum of space erupted in brilliant light as the Zephyrian fleet unleashed its full firepower on the Liberty. Particle beams bright enough to blind unprotected eyes lanced out from dozens of ships. Plasma torpedoes streaked across the darkness like miniature suns. Energy pulses that could crack the hull of a battlecruiser hammered against the human ship from every direction. For 30 seconds, the alien weapons poured destructive energy into their target. When the barrage finally ended, Admiral Kethvar expected to see nothing but glowing debris where the human ship had been. Instead, the USS Liberty was still there. "What?" Kethvar stepped closer to the main screen, unable to believe what he was seeing. The human ship was not only intact, it appeared to be completely undamaged. "How is this possible?" "Sir," the sensor operator called out, his voice shaking, "the human vessel's hull integrity is at 98%. Minimal damage to outer armor plating only." "That's impossible," Commander Velthos protested. "No ship can withstand that level of concentrated fire, especially not some primitive metal construct." Aboard the Liberty, Captain Morrison picked himself up from the deck where the impact of dozens of energy weapons had thrown him. Around the bridge, his crew was getting back to their feet, checking their stations for damage. "Report," Morrison called out, settling back into his command chair. Chief Engineer Dan Parker's voice came over the intercom, calm and professional despite what they had just endured. "All systems nominal, Captain. Kinetic barriers absorbed most of the energy weapons. What got through was dispersed by the ablative armor. Hull breach on Deck 7, but it's already been sealed. No casualties reported." Lieutenant Amy Brooks looked up from her weapons console with a grin. "All weapon systems online and ready?" "Sir, they didn't even scratch our main guns." Morrison nodded, feeling a surge of pride in his ship and crew. The Liberty had been designed by Earth's best engineers, specifically to survive in hostile alien space. Her kinetic barrier system could stop energy weapons by creating a field that dispersed incoming beams across a wide area. Her ablative armor was designed to absorb tremendous amounts of heat and energy, protecting the vital systems underneath. Most importantly, her internal structure was built with redundant systems and compartmentalized design so that damage to one section wouldn't cripple the entire ship. "Lisa, open a channel to the alien fleet," Morrison ordered. The communications officer worked at her console. "Channel open, sir." Morrison stood up, straightening his uniform. "Admiral Kethvar, that was quite a light show. Our turn now. On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethvar stared at the human captain's image with growing alarm. The human's calm confidence was unnerving. No species should be able to survive that kind of assault and then taunt their attackers. "Captain," Kethvar said, trying to keep his voice steady, "you cannot have survived that attack undamaged. Your ship's sensors must be malfunctioning." Morrison smiled, and there was something predatory in that expression that made Kethvar's skin crawl. "Our sensors work just fine, Admiral. In fact, they're good enough to give us detailed scans of your ships. Very interesting technology you have there. Energy-based hulls, plasma weapons, deflector shields. Very impressive. Then you understand the power you face," Kethvar said, though he was beginning to feel less certain about that power. "Oh, I understand perfectly," Morrison replied. "The problem is, your technology has a weakness. You've been fighting energy-based opponents for so long that you've forgotten how to deal with good old-fashioned kinetic weapons, Morrison gestured to someone off-screen. Amy, show them what a railgun can do. Aboard the Liberty, Lieutenant. Brooks targeted the closest alien destroyer and fired a single shot from the ship's primary railgun. The weapon used magnetic fields to accelerate a dense metal projectile to incredible speed. The solid slug, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the distance between ships in less than a second. The alien destroyer's energy, shields designed to deflect plasma and particle beams, offered no resistance to the physical projectile. The railgun slug punched through the ship's energy-based hull like it was made of paper, tearing completely through the vessel and out. The other side. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the alien ship began to come apart, its energy matrix destabilizing as critical systems failed. Within minutes, the entire destroyer had collapsed into a cloud of dissipating energy and metal debris. The silence on the Zephyrian flagship was absolute. Every crew member stared at their displays in shock, unable to process what they had just witnessed. A single shot from the human ship had completely destroyed one of their vessels. How? Commander Velthos whispered. Our shields stopped every form of energy weapon ever developed. How did they penetrate our defenses? Admiral Kethvar felt cold fear creeping through his body. Kinetic weapons, he said slowly. Solid projectiles. Our shields don't stop physical matter. Only energy. On the main screen, Captain Morrison was still smiling. That was our smallest gun, Admiral. Would you like to see what our heavy weapons can do? Kethvar looked around his bridge at his crews, frightened faces. For the first time in 3 centuries of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire was facing an enemy they didn't understand. These humans fought with weapons that ignored their most advanced defenses. They built ships that could absorb devastating attacks and keep fighting. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to enjoy the battle. Admiral, his sensor operator called out urgently, the human ship is moving, changing course and speed. On the tactical display, Kethvar watched the Liberty begin a series of evasive maneuvers unlike anything he had ever seen. The human ship twisted and rolled through space with impossible agility for something so large. Its movements were unpredictable, chaotic, as if the captain was making up his tactics as he went along. All ships, Kethvar ordered desperately. Target the human vessel. Continuous fire. Don't let it get into weapons range. But even as he gave the order, Admiral Kethvar realized that the human ship was already in weapons range. It had been in weapons range from the moment it approached their fleet. The humans had simply chosen not to fire until now. The Liberty fired again, this time multiple shots from different weapons. Railgun slugs tore through 2 more destroyers, while missile volleys streaked toward a cruiser. The Zephyrian ships tried to return fire, but the human vessel was moving too fast and too unpredictably for their targeting systems to lock on. Sir, Commander Velthos reported, his voice barely above a whisper, we've lost 4 ships in less than 5 minutes. Our weapons can't track their movements, and our defenses are useless against their attacks. Admiral Kethvar gripped the railing of his command platform, watching his perfectly ordered fleet being torn apart by a single enemy ship. For the first time in his long military career, he was facing an opponent that fought by completely different rules. The humans, he was beginning to realize, were not like any species the Zephyrian Empire had ever encountered. Captain Morrison watched the tactical display as another alien destroyer broke apart under the impact of his ship's weapons. The Zephyrian vessels were beautiful to look at, with their flowing energy hulls and graceful curves, but they were proving surprisingly fragile when faced with solid projectiles. "Amy, target that cruiser on our starboard side," Morrison ordered, pointing to a larger enemy ship that was trying to maneuver into a better firing position. "Hit them with a full missile volley." Lieutenant Brooks worked at her weapons console, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Targeting solution locked, sir. Firing missiles." 6 nuclear-tipped missiles erupted from the Liberty's launch tubes, their engines burning bright as they accelerated toward their target. The alien cruiser tried to intercept them with point defense weapons, but the human missiles were designed to penetrate enemy defenses. They twisted and weaved through space, using evasive patterns that confused the alien targeting systems. 3 missiles made it through the defensive fire and detonated against the cruiser's hull. The nuclear explosions sent waves of radiation and electromagnetic pulse through the alien ship's energy-based structure. Systems failed in cascading failures as the cruiser's power grid overloaded and collapsed. "Direct hits," Brooks reported with satisfaction. "Enemy vessel is dead in space." Morrison nodded, but his attention was already focused on the next target. The alien fleet was trying to surround the Liberty, using their superior numbers to box in the human ship. It was a sound tactical plan, except for one problem. They were moving too slowly. "Dan, give me everything the engines have," Morrison called down to engineering. "You've got it, Captain," came the reply. "Fusion reactors at 110%. We can maintain this power level for about 30 minutes before we start risking containment failure." "That should be plenty of time," Morrison said grimly. The Liberty suddenly accelerated, her powerful engines pushing the ship far beyond what the aliens thought possible for such a massive vessel. The Zephyrians had been trying to predict the human ships' movements based on their own technology, but human ships were built differently. Where alien vessels relied on energy fields for propulsion, human ships used brute force fusion rockets that could generate incredible thrust. Admiral Kethvar watched in growing horror as the human ship burst through his carefully planned encirclement like it was made of paper. The Liberty rolled and twisted through space with the agility of a fighter craft, despite being larger than most of his destroyers. "How are they moving like that?" Commander Velthos asked, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. "No ship that size should be able to maneuver so quickly." "Their propulsion system," Kethvar realized. "It's not energy-based like ours. They're using some form of reaction drive. Crude, but apparently very powerful." The human ship was now behind his formation, attacking his vessels from an unexpected angle. 2 more destroyers exploded under railgun fire before his captains could react to the new threat. "All ships, adjust formation," Kethvar ordered desperately. "Don't let them get behind us again." But even as he gave the order, he knew it was useless. The human ship was faster and more maneuverable than anything in his fleet. Worse, the human captain seemed to anticipate every move the Zephyrians made, as if he could read their tactical doctrine. Aboard the Liberty, Morrison was indeed reading the alien tactics like an open book. The Zephyrians fought with precision and formal discipline, following established patterns that had worked against energy-based opponents. Unfortunately for them, those same patterns made them predictable. "Lisa, patch me through to the alien flagship," Morrison ordered. "Channel open, sir." Morrison looked directly into the camera, knowing his image was being transmitted to Admiral Kethvar. "Admiral, you're losing ships faster than you can count them. Don't you think it's time to reconsider your position?" On the alien flagship, Kethvar's face was a mask of barely controlled panic. "Captain Morrison, your tactics are unconventional." But you are still outnumbered. Even if you destroy half my fleet, we will still have enough ships to overwhelm you. Will you? Morrison asked, with a slight smile. Let me ask you something, Admiral. How many ships have you lost so far? Kethvar checked his tactical display. 7 destroyers and 2 cruisers. And how many shots have we fired? The alien admiral paused, clearly doing calculations in his head. Approximately 15. 15 shots, 9 kills, Morrison said cheerfully. That's better than a 50% hit rate, and every hit has been a kill. At this rate, we'll have your entire fleet destroyed in about 45 minutes. The numbers hit Kethvar like a physical blow. The human was right. Every weapon the Liberty fired seemed to destroy or cripple an enemy ship. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian fleet had fired hundreds of shots without causing any significant damage to their opponent. Your weapons, Kethvar said slowly. They're designed specifically to counter our technology. Actually, no, Morrison replied. Our weapons are designed to fight other humans. You see, Admiral, we've been at war with each other for thousands of years. We know every possible way to build a ship and every possible way to destroy one. Kinetic weapons, energy weapons, chemical explosives, nuclear warheads, biological weapons, computer viruses. We've tried it all. Morrison gestured around his bridge. This ship was built to fight enemies who know all our tricks and have defenses against all our weapons. You've been fighting species who use technology similar to your own. We're something completely different. The truth of the human's words was becoming increasingly clear as more Zephyrian ships fell to the Liberty's attacks. The alien fleet's energy shields were useless against solid projectiles. Their beautiful, flowing hulls offered no protection against nuclear explosions. Their sophisticated targeting systems couldn't track a ship that moved in chaotic, unpredictable patterns. Captain, Admiral Kethvar said, his voice strained. What do you want? Are you seeking our surrender? Morrison considered the question. Actually, Admiral, I'm just trying to convince you to leave our star system. We never wanted to fight you. You're the ones who showed up here demanding our surrender. But you're winning, Velthos protested from beside Kethvar. Your single ship is destroying our entire fleet. Why would you let us go? Because we're not conquerors, Morrison explained. We don't want to rule over other species or steal their worlds. We just want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. If you leave now, we'll stop shooting at you. The alien bridge crew exchanged confused glances. This made no sense according to their understanding of warfare. The strong conquered the weak. That was the natural order of things. A species that could defeat the Zephyrian Empire should be demanding tribute and territory, not offering mercy. Sir, the tactical officer called out urgently. Long-range sensors are detecting new contacts entering the system. Multiple ships approaching from the outer rim. Admiral Kethvar felt his heart sink. Human reinforcements. His fleet was already being torn apart by a single enemy vessel. If the humans brought their entire military to bear against him, the Zephyrian Empire would face its first major defeat in centuries. How many ships? He asked quietly. Difficult to determine, sir. They appear to be using some form of stealth technology. Sensors can barely detect them. On the Liberty's bridge, Morrison was receiving similar reports from his sensor operator. Captain, I'm picking up multiple friendly contacts on the edge of the system. Looks like Admiral Stone got our message. Morrison smiled with genuine warmth. About time. Open a channel to the flagship Defiance. A new face appeared on a secondary screen. An older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes wearing an admiral's uniform. Jake, looks like you've been having fun out here. Just a minor disagreement with our visitors, Admiral, Morrison replied. They seem to think we should surrender our planet to them. Admiral Helen Stone looked past Morrison to study the tactical display showing the ongoing battle. I can see that. Looks like you've convinced them otherwise. We're working on it, Morrison agreed. How many ships did you bring? Enough, Stone said simply. The entire Third Fleet. We were in the area conducting exercises when we received your transmission. Admiral Kethvar listened to this exchange with growing dread. The humans spoke casually about their military strength, as if the destruction of his fleet was just a minor training exercise. What kind of species had the Zephyrian Empire encountered? Admiral Kethvar. Captain Morrison's voice brought him back to the present. I believe you wanted to know what we want. Here it is. Take your remaining ships and leave our system immediately. Don't come back. Don't send other fleets to investigate us, and definitely don't threaten Earth again. Kethvar looked around, his bridge at his frightened crew, then at the tactical display showing his fleet being systematically destroyed by a single enemy ship. In the distance, more human vessels were approaching. Ships his sensors could barely detect, suggesting technology even more advanced than what he was already facing. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Kethvar was facing an enemy he could not defeat. 3 months later, Admiral Kethvar stood before the assembled Galactic Council in the Great Chamber on Zephyr Prime. The massive hall could hold representatives from 100 different species, though today only the 12 most powerful civilizations were present. Their floating platforms surrounded him in a circle, each delegate studying him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright disbelief. High Counselor Drathmek, leader of the Zephyrian Empire, leaned forward in his ornate chair. His ancient face showed the weight of 3 centuries of rule, and his voice carried the authority of absolute power. Admiral Kethvar, Drathmek began, you have presented us with a most unusual report. You claim that a primitive species calling themselves humans not only defeated our fleet, but did so while showing mercy to their enemies. Are you certain your memory has not been affected by combat stress? Kethvar had expected this question. The events at Earth seemed impossible even to him, and he had lived through them. High Counselor, I have brought visual records of the entire encounter. I invite the Council to review them and draw their own conclusions. The chamber's main display activated, showing footage from the battle. The Council members watched in silence as the human ship Liberty absorbed devastating energy weapons fire without taking significant damage, then responded with kinetic weapons that tore through Zephyrian shields like they were made of air. Counselor Zexathara of the Crystalline Collective spoke first, her translucent form shimmering with agitation. This footage must be fabricated. No species using such primitive technology could possibly defeat energy-based defenses. The footage is authentic, Kethvar replied calmly. I have submitted it to our best analysts. There are no signs of alteration or digital manipulation. The display continued, showing the arrival of the human fleet and the subsequent rescue operations. Several council members shifted uncomfortably as they watched human medical teams working to save Zephyrian lives. Explain their behavior, demanded Counselor Korth Vale of the Machine Empire, his mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. Why would they save their enemies? What tactical advantage does this provide? None that I can determine, Kethvar admitted. They gained nothing from their mercy except the gratitude of their defeated opponents. When I asked their admiral, Stone about it, she said it was simply the right thing to do. A murmur of confusion rippled through the assembled delegates. The concept of acting without tactical advantage was foreign to most galactic civilizations. High Counselor Drathmech studied the tactical readings that accompanied the visual records. Admiral, your report states that the humans' single escort vessel destroyed or disabled 15 of our ships before their main fleet arrived. How is this possible? Their technology operates on completely different principles than ours, Kethvar explained. While we have focused on energy-based systems for their elegance and efficiency, the humans have perfected the use of kinetic weapons and physical defenses. Their ships are built like fortresses, designed to absorb tremendous punishment and keep fighting. Counselor Velandra of the Psionic Dominion, her large eyes glowing with mental energy, spoke for the first time. I sense truth in your words, Admiral. But more than that, I sense fear. What frightens you about these humans? Kethvar paused, considering how to express something that had haunted him for months. Counselor, in my centuries of service, I have conquered dozens of worlds. Some species surrendered immediately, others fought bravely before being defeated. But the humans, they think about warfare in ways I cannot comprehend. Explain. They fight as individuals, Kethvar said slowly. Each of their ships acted independently, making tactical decisions in real time based on changing conditions. Our forces follow doctrine and established patterns. Theirs improvise and adapt constantly. It was like fighting chaos itself. The Abu chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Most galactic civilizations had evolved beyond individual initiative in warfare, preferring coordinated group tactics and centralized command structures. The idea of every ship captain making independent decisions during battle was terrifying. But surely, Counselor Zexathara protested, such chaos must lead to confusion and friendly fire incidents. On the contrary, Kethvar replied, their coordination was perfect despite the apparent lack of central control. Each captain seemed to know exactly what his colleagues were doing without constant communication. It was as if they shared a single mind dedicated to warfare. Commander Velthos, who had accompanied Kethvar to the council session, stepped forward, with permission to speak. High Counselor, if I may add something to the Admiral's report? Drathmech nodded. The humans' rescue operations were conducted with the same efficiency as their attacks, Velthos said. They saved 17 of our crew members, including several who would have died without immediate medical attention. Their doctors worked for hours to understand our physiology and develop treatments. They asked for nothing in return. Counselor Korthval's mechanical head swiveled toward Velthos. And what is your assessment of their motivations? I believe they genuinely value life, even enemy life, Velthos replied. It is not a tactical decision or a political statement. It appears to be a fundamental aspect of their nature. The Council digested this information in uncomfortable silence. Several members exchanged glances, clearly communicating through private channels. Admiral, High Counselor Drathmech said finally, what is your recommendation regarding future contact with this human species? Kethvar had been preparing for this question since his return. High Counselor, I recommend that the Empire avoid all contact with human space unless absolutely necessary. If contact is unavoidable, it should be conducted through diplomatic channels with full acknowledgement of their sovereignty. You recommend treating them as equals? Counselor Zexathara asked in shock. I recommend treating them as superiors, Kethvar corrected bluntly. Their military capabilities far exceed our own, and their tactical flexibility makes them nearly impossible to defeat in conventional warfare. More importantly, their demonstrated mercy suggests that peaceful coexistence is possible if we approach them with respect rather than conquest. The chamber erupted in heated discussion as delegates debated this unprecedented situation. Never before had the Galactic Council been forced to acknowledge a species as militarily superior to themselves. High Counselor Drathmech raised his hand for silence. The Council will deliberate on this matter. Admiral, you and your officers are dismissed. As Kethvar and Velthos left the chamber, they could hear the heated arguments continuing behind them. The Admiral knew that some Council members would never accept that a primitive species could be their equals, let alone their superiors. Sir, Velthos asked as they walked through the corridors of the Council building, do you think they'll listen to your recommendations? Kethvar paused at a window overlooking the vast city of Zephyr Prime. For 3 centuries, this world had been the center of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. Ships from hundreds of conquered worlds brought tribute to these gleaming towers. The Zephyrian way of life was built on the assumption that they were the dominant force in the galaxy. Some will listen, he said finally. Others will insist on testing the human strength for themselves. Those who choose that path will learn the same lesson we did, probably at an even higher cost. Velthos nodded thoughtfully. And what lesson is that, sir? That the age of easy conquest is over? Kethvar replied. The humans have shown that superior technology and overwhelming numbers are not enough if your enemy thinks differently about warfare itself. More importantly, they've shown that mercy and strength are not opposites. A species that can completely destroy its enemies and then chooses to save them instead. Such beings change the fundamental rules of galactic politics. As they walked away from the council chamber, neither officer noticed the small recording device hidden in the corridor wall. The conversation they had just had would soon be transmitted to intelligence agencies across the galaxy, carrying word of a new power that fought like demons and showed mercy like angels. The galaxy would never be the same. Far away, in the Sol system, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Earth Defense Station, watching construction crews work on the latest additions to humanity's growing fleet. The encounter with the Zephyrians had convinced Earth's leaders that contact with hostile alien civilizations was inevitable. Humanity needed to be ready. Dr. Kate Adams joined him at the window, carrying a tablet filled with her analysis of the Zephyrian psychology profiles. "Any word from our alien friends?" Morrison asked. "Long-range monitoring stations have detected several diplomatic missions leaving Zephyrian space," Adams replied. "It looks like word of our encounter is spreading."